When death doesn't get the last word, rebuilding a life you never asked for. Welcome to the Soft Girl Era podcast, where we empower Black professionals, leaders, and entrepreneurs to shift from survival mode to thriving with intention, softness, and unapologetic joy. I'm your host, Leon Dolce, pronounced Dolce, like sweet softness whispered in French. Today, I had the profound honor of sitting down with Brandi Belvin, a woman whose story will shake you awake and remind you that even when life shatters everything you thought was permanent, you still get to choose what happens next. Brandi lost her husband and her son within months of each other. Months, not years, not a lifetime apart. Months. And yet, here she stands, not just surviving, but thriving with a depth, authority, and passion that could light up entire cities. She's living proof that there is still life after death if you choose to live. And that choice, that daily, sometimes hourly decision to keep going, is what makes her message so vital for every Black woman listening who has ever felt like she's been handed a life she didn't ask for. Brandy's impact on this world is profound because she refuses to let grief have the final say. She's helping Black women everywhere understand that loss doesn't erase your purpose, it can refine it. She's teaching us that softness isn't weakness, it's the bravest thing you can choose when the world has tried to harden you. Let me ask you something. You know what nobody tells you about grief? That it doesn't just take the people you love, it takes your identity too, your routines, your future tense, the version of yourself you thought you'd be at 50, 60, 70. And then it asks you a question so audacious, it feels almost cruel. Now what? Most of us didn't ask for half the things we're carrying. We didn't ask to be the strong one, the dependable one, the one who holds it all together while quietly falling apart. We didn't ask to lose people we loved, dreams we nurtured, versions of ourselves we thought were permanent. But here we are. And the question isn't whether we asked for it. The question is, what are we going to do now? Brandy's answer is clear. You choose to live, not in some Instagram filtered, toxic positivity kind of way, but in a raw, messy, deeply intentional way. You choose to rebuild. You choose to honor what was lost by refusing to lose yourself. You choose softness over survival mode. And that, my friends, is the heartbeat of the soft girl era. Let me break down three takeaways from my conversation with Brandy, three truths that every Black woman entrepreneur, leader, and professional needs to tattoo on her soul. First, grief doesn't dictate your future. Your choice to rebuild does. Loss ends one chapter, but passion reignites the next. When Brandy lost her husband and son, she could have stayed in that chapter forever, and no one would have blamed her. But she didn't. She turned the page, not because the grief disappeared, but because she decided that her story wasn't over. That's power, that's agency, that's the kind of authority that doesn't come from a title or a degree. It comes from looking devastation in the face and saying, I'm still here. Second, discipline turns survival into sustainable success. Like building a business amid chaos, you structure your days with intention to honor the past while forging ahead. Grief is chaotic, it's unpredictable. It ambushes you in the cereal aisle and at 3 in the morning. But discipline, the kind Brandy practices, creates a container for that chaos. It says, I will get up, I will move my body, I will show up for my work, my community, my healing. Not because I feel like it, but because I've decided that my life still matters. And that discipline, that daily commitment to structure and intention, is what transforms survival into something sustainable, something that doesn't just keep you alive, but helps you thrive. Third, authentic influence outlasts trends. Stay rooted in your values, and your story becomes a beacon for others navigating their own after. Brandy's story isn't polished, it's not a highlight reel, it's real. And that realness and that willingness to be vulnerable and honest about the hardest parts of her journey is what makes her influence so powerful. Because when you show up authentically, when you refuse to pretend that everything is fine when it's not, you give other people permission to do the same. You become a lighthouse. And in a world full of noise and performance, that kind of authenticity is revolutionary. Now, I want to ground these takeaways in the stories of three Black women who've embodied this life after death philosophy through entrepreneurial fire and personal resilience. These aren't just stories, they're blueprints. They're proof that when life tries to take everything, you can still choose to build something beautiful. Let's start with Oprah Winfrey. Yes, that Oprah. The media mogul, the billionaire, the woman who turned her name into a verb. But before all of that, Oprah was a girl who survived sexual abuse, poverty, and the death of her infant son. At 29, she was suicidal and jobless. She could have stayed there, but she didn't. She chose therapy. She chose spiritual depth. She chose to tell her story vulnerably on a platform that would eventually become the most watched talk show in the world. Born in 1954 in Mississippi, Oprah was molested by relatives and fled at 14. The death of her son in 1968 crushed her, but instead of letting that devastation define her, she pivoted to local news. She launched The Oprah Winfrey Show with vulnerable storytelling that millions of people connected with because it was honest. She built Harpo Productions. She launched OWN. She authored bestsellers. She shattered barriers with unyielding passion. And in doing so, she empowered millions of Black women to see themselves as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as worthy of success. Oprah's story directly mirrors Brandy's message. Loss doesn't have to be the end. It can be the beginning of something extraordinary. She learned lessons in forgiveness and purpose that became the foundation of an empire. She didn't just survive her trauma, she transformed it into a platform that redefined media success and gave Black women permission to lead with depth and authenticity. Next, let's talk about Melody Hobson. If you don't know her name, you should. She's the co CEO of Ariel Investments, the president of DreamWorks, and one of the most powerful women in finance. But she grew up poor on Chicago's South Side. Her mother's check cashing business collapsed. Family members died. And Melody had to navigate grief and financial instability while trying to break into an industry that wasn't exactly rolling out the red carpet for Black women. But she found a mentor in John Rogers Jr. She went to Princeton. She applied disciplined investing principles with deep personal authority. Growing up in the 1970s in Chicago, Melody watched her single mother's business fail amid the deaths of loved ones. That pushed her to intern at 16, to work harder, to prove that resilience could build wealth. And now she manages billions of dollars, sits on the Starbucks board, and is married to George Lucas. She commands boardrooms with passionate precision. Melody's story exemplifies life after familial and economic death. She chose to rebuild. She chose discipline. She chose to let her values guide her influence. And that's what fuels business authority, the kind Brandy embodies in her unchosen new life. Melody didn't just overcome adversity, she used it as fuel to inspire Black entrepreneurs everywhere to thrive post crisis. She boosted Black wealth via investing education and showed the world that your past doesn't determine your future, your choices do. Finally, Serena Williams, tennis legend, entrepreneur, venture capitalist. Serena nearly died during childbirth in 2017 due to postpartum hemorrhage. She'd already survived a pulmonary embolism in 2010 after a foot injury. She knows what it's like to stare death in the face. But instead of letting those experiences define her, she redefined herself. Serena dominated tennis from 1999 onward. But the 2010 blood clot and the 2017 birth trauma echoed deeper losses that could have ended her career and her life. Instead, she chose passionate rehab. She chose venture investing through Serena Ventures and has funded over 70 startups, many of them led by women and people of color. She became a billionaire. She retired from tennis on her own terms. She revolutionized women's sports business. She roared back with fierce, authoritative depth. Serena's story mirrors choosing life after literal death's door. It parallels Brandy's grief to thrival arc. It shows us that even when life tries to take everything, you can still choose to build something beautiful. She won 23 Grand Slams and turned her brand into an empire, not by pretending the pain didn't exist, but by using it as a foundation for something greater. She empowered Black female founders post crisis and showed the world that softness and strength aren't opposites, they're partners. These women, Oprah, Melody, Serena, they all made the same choice Brandy made. They chose life, they chose depth, they chose passion. They chose to let their pain become a platform, not a prison. And here's what I want you to hear, really hear. You don't have to be a billionaire or a media mogul or a tennis champion to make that choice. You just have to be willing, willing to get up one more time, willing to structure your days with intention, willing to honor your grief without letting it consume you, willing to be soft in a world that taught you survival, because that's what the soft girl era is really about. It's not about aesthetics or trends. It's about a spiritual, emotional, and mental recalibration. It's about dropping the superwoman cape. It's about learning to say no without guilt. It's about setting boundaries without apology. It's about resting without explanation. It's about embracing healing, wholeness, softness, and emotional honesty. It's about choosing yourself, not out of burnout, but out of reverence. Brandi Belvin is living proof that there is life after death if you choose to live. She's living proof that grief doesn't have to dictate your future. She's living proof that discipline can turn survival into sustainable success. She's living proof that authentic influence outlasts every trend, every tragedy, every version of yourself you thought you'd lost forever. So here's my challenge to you right now, not tomorrow, not next week, right now. Identify one death in your life. Maybe it's a lost relationship. Maybe it's a failed business. Maybe it's a dream you buried. Maybe it's a version of yourself you've been mourning. And then take one disciplined action to rebuild. Journal your vision, pitch that idea, set that boundary, rest without guilt, choose to live boldly, choose to be soft, choose to honor what was lost by refusing to lose yourself. Because the truth is, you didn't ask for half the things you're carrying, but you're still here. And that means your story isn't over. That means there's still life after every death. That means you get to choose what comes next. And if you choose life, if you choose softness, if you choose to rebuild with depth and passion and authority, then you're not just surviving, you're thriving, you're leading. You're becoming the lighthouse for someone else who's navigating their own after. Death doesn't get the last word in your story. You do. Grief doesn't get to write your future. You do. Loss doesn't get to define your legacy. You do. So choose life, choose softness, choose to rebuild, choose to thrive. Your soft girl era is waiting. And the world needs you to step into it fully, unapologetically, powerfully. Thank you